So plan to stick around. Next we have, okay, I'm going to put these on totally wrong. I decided to do that. Oh, come on. See? We have for County Assessor Keith Taylor. Yay!
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Hello? Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Taylor. I'm currently the Chief Deputy Assessor here in Ventura County. I'm currently the Chief Deputy Assessor in Ventura County, and I'm running for Ventura County Assessor. My experience in assessing, being in the assessor's office spans 35 years. In April of 1987, I was hired by the Santa Barbara County Assessor, where I started my career assessing business personal property. And over the years, learned how to value and assess all types of property. What you really want to know about your assessor is that he is administrator of laws and regulations that assure property owners that their property is being assessed fairly and accurately and impartially. What really drives the assessor's work is Proposition 13. Proposition 13 was passed in 1978. It was a landmark case where the voters really wanted to make sure that they could afford their property and maintain their property throughout their lifetime. It was really to help seniors afford their property taxes and stay in their property. As we've seen over the years, it's really benefited everyone because you basically learn that when you buy your property, there's a base year value set, and that base year value could only go up 2% a year. With that in mind, you know that your property tax, what your property tax assessment will be on an annual basis. The other thing that was put into place was the property tax rate, which was 1%. So whenever you look at your tax bill and you see your assessed value, that first line is Prop 13, 1% tax rate. Everything else that's on your tax bill is not something the assessor applies to that bill. It's either put on there by the voters with their school bonds or with some other fixed charges, they call it, that would be for vector services or wastewater services and so forth. But the assessor is really responsible for setting the base value for that property tax assessment throughout the county. Why is that important? Well, there's a lot of stakeholders that count on the assessor's property tax base. Well, let me tell you, last year the property tax assessment was $150 billion in Ventura County. That equates to $1.5 billion in property tax assessments. The stakeholders that really rely on the assessor for that are schools. Schools get 53% of property taxes in the state. The county gets 20%, the cities get 9%, and then the rest goes to the districts. So those are important numbers that they rely on for their budgets, so they know what projects they need to, that they can fund and how they can pay for their services throughout the county. So what does that base really entail? Well, everything's assessable in California unless it's exempt, and most property that's exempt is either it's government-owned property. So federal, state, schools, local property that's owned by the county or cities exempt for property tax. But everything else is accessible. Your residential property, commercial property, oil and gas, mineral rights are accessible. Boats and planes and business personal property, that is all accessible and creates that base year value or base tax amount for everyone. And again, that's important for everyone. But what does the assessor do for the individual property owners in the county? And they do quite a bit. The reason they're voted for is because they really work for the communities here. They're not driven by the Board of Supervisors or by the CEO where they have to create a certain budget for the county. They do their job based on what the rules and regulations allow, and that amount is then what creates the property tax amount for the county and for other counties throughout the state. So one of the things that the assessor really looks for on an annual basis is what's called a Proposition 8. That was passed shortly after Prop 13, and that said, if that market value or property actually falls below that base year value that's factored, the assessor is required. He is required to put the lower of the two values on the assessment. So that helps benefit the property owners, knowing that they're not getting assessed for a property that's higher than what the market value is intended. And we do thousands and thousands of reviews every year for that. Back in 2007, 2008, Ventura County lowered about 85,000 properties because of that, the Great Recession. So we're continually looking at that for property owners. Other things that the assessor really is proactive on is we've had fires in this county, Thomas, Woolsey, the Hill Fire. We put a group together to actually go out and look at those properties after the fire as soon as we were allowed in the area to make sure that we reduce that property value for those property owners, because they don't want to pay tax for property that's no longer, their improvements are no longer there. I know it's a small piece for them, but it reassured them they didn't have to worry about when a property tax came, how they were going to pay for something that they weren't able to live in right now. And then we were also there to tell them if they were able to rebuild, or if they rebuilt, how that property tax assessment would go back on the roll. And basically that it didn't get reassessed to current market value. It was their old base value factor that went on the roll, as long as it was the equivalent property. And one other thing we did recently, COVID-19 hit, and it affected a lot of businesses. The government restricted access to them. And so we reached out to them, proactively reached out to them and asked them to give us some information where we could actually look at the property and lower it based on how that affected it. So what you really want to look for in your assessor is someone who has experience, and I pretty much have demonstrated that I know how to do all that over my 35 years. And I really wanted to express on you that the integrity and transparency of the assessor's office is there. We really strongly support customer service. We really want people to call and ask us about questions about their property if they have anything that they think is value too high, and we're more than happy to do informal reviews on those properties. So I appreciate your support come June 7th. Keith Taylor for Ventura County Assessor. Thank you.